these are a handful of ones that have actually flown to space and back. Our first mission, our third mission, and then our fifth mission that went up to space.
First commercial deal in space.
First commercial deal for manufacturing a physical product in space with like a large publicly traded company. By the way, the first of many deals we've got coming down the pipe.
Let's go. Jordan Kessel, Goanna Capital. Varda is the only company manufacturing drugs in space and bringing them back to Earth. That's not a pitch. They've already done it. Delian, how you doing?
Hey man, how's it going? Welcome to the facility.
Thanks for having me.
Of course, of course.
So we're here with Delian, co-founder of Varda Space. For those who don't know anything about it, tell me what you're building.
We basically build these 300 kilogram space factories that produce pharmaceutical product up in the microgravity environment of low Earth orbit. Up there you have totally different physics than what you have down here on Earth, and so you get completely different results because of that can improve the performance of various pharmaceuticals.
Well, we're here in Segundo, California at your facility. I'd love to take a look and learn more.
Yeah, let's take you around. One cool thing about our space company is we've actually flown stuff to space and come back down on the ground. So these are a handful of our last couple missions. This is W5, 3, W2, and W1 with signatures from all the folks that were involved in those missions. This is our mission control. Right now we don't have any spacecraft up in orbit, so just empty room.
Talk to me about what actually happens with the medication that's different making it there than making it on Earth.
I think it's helpful to understand, which is like an analogy from a larger chemical system that is not just a drug. Think a glass of water with an ice cube in it. When you put an ice cube in a glass of water down here on Earth, you know naturally that ice cube is going to float to the top of that cup. Why? That ice cube is lighter than basically the heavy water that's around it, and when we're inside of this gravitational field down here on Earth, lighter things move up, heavier things move down. When you're up in space, there is no gravity. So if you put that ice cube in the middle of that glass of water, it'll just stay there because there is no such thing as up or down. And so you can think of what's happening up there is you're removing what's known as density-driven transport. So things like sedimentation, convection, or what's causing that ice cube to float, buoyancy, do not exist up there. So there's not these things where if there's different light versus heavy things in a system, they don't get moved around. And turns out that allows you to have things that are light and heavy right next to each other, but they'll just stay there right next to each other. And that gives you a very different chemical result than what you have down here on Earth.
The massive facility here.
Yeah, so this is our primary HQ. It's about 60,000 square feet. We got very lucky. We signed this lease in the depths of the 2021 COVID market, way under market. We definitely are now packed in like sardines here, so we had to open up a second facility where we do a lot of our pharmaceutical work. That's just down the block, about 10,000 square feet. And then we also just signed another lease for a 200,000 square foot facility. We're actually taking over one of the old Mattel buildings where they actually literally did Barbie manufacturing. So we're making a Barbie plant into a space drugs and arms plant. That's going to be a fun transition, and now it'll allow us to now have everybody back under the same roof again.
Amazing.
This is our primary clean room. This is where we do all of the assembly and manufacturing of our satellite systems. So I'll point out basically what these things look like. Right here in front of us is what's known as our satellite bus. So this is basically what provides all of the primary power, communications, propulsion, GPS chip, flight computer, everything that you need to operate up in space is inside of that bus. The second part of the spacecraft is what you can see in that back one, basically the top half. That's the reentry pod. That's basically when everything is done, that's the pod that basically survives and comes back down to the ground effectively with the finished goods.
Okay.
So it's sort of like a two-part, sort of spacecraft.
And you're the only manufacturer making medicine in space and bringing it down to Earth.
Yeah, what's crazy is for the past basically 50 years, there's been 3 ways for space companies to make money. You either have government contracts, you provide internet to Earth, or you take photos of the Earth. That is it. That is the only way that any space company has ever made money. We recently, just about 2 weeks ago, announced a partnership with United Therapeutics. They're a $25 billion publicly traded pharmaceutical company that focuses on pulmonary health. So think like, sort of lung, blood, etc. We're working across 10 different molecules with them. And that partnership is the first time that there's been a new business model in space ever. So we're literally
first commercial deal in space.
First commercial deal for manufacturing a physical product in space with like a large publicly traded company. By the way, the first of many deals that we've got coming down the pipe.
Let's go. So now it's my understanding they come down looking like this, but they go up. You partner with SpaceX, correct?
Yes. Imagine with United Therapeutics, there's a whole long process of working with their drugs. First, they send us the drug that they want improved in microgravity. That first goes to our pharmaceutical lab down the block. There we study the drug, we figure out how does gravity affect it, right? When I gave that ice cube example, you have to figure out what do you do in space without gravity that makes the drug better. Then once we figure that out, we then have to basically think of it as like bioprocessing equipment. It kind of looks like the type of equipment that you do the tests on the ground, but ours is like fit inside the spacecraft, survive the SpaceX launch, etc. Put the drug inside of that basically bioreactor. That bioreactor goes inside one of those pods. Pods gets attached to the satellite. Then this satellite plus pod system gets shipped out to a SpaceX facility, typically on the California coast up in Vandenberg. Sits there for about a month, gets launched up into orbit. Once it's in orbit, we start communicating with it from mission control. Once that's all done, we basically spin that satellite around, slow down with small little rocket engines. So you can see a couple of those right over here, those that have that little sort of red cap on them.
It's like a mini version.
Yeah, it's like a mini version. We don't have to, the big rocket needs to get us up to space. These little rocket engines basically slow us down just enough that it now starts to hit the atmosphere, the whole spacecraft. The pod is designed to basically survive through the atmosphere. It's going Mach 25 when it hits it, and so it mostly uses the atmosphere to slow itself the rest of the way down. And then we pick up that pod from the Australian desert, load that up basically into a helicopter, send that to a pharmaceutical facility. That gets put into like a syringe, a capsule, a tablet, patients basically take it. What's crazy is like you don't need to produce that much product. So one example that I like to give is the Pfizer COVID vaccine. In 2021 and 2022, it had 500 million doses in America. If you look at how much actual like drug product went into all those doses, it was only 2 milk-gallon jugs. Those 2 milk-gallon jugs got dosed out into 500 million syringes that mostly were filled with saline. Up in space, we just make those milk-gallon jugs, and then down here on the ground, other people basically go take those milk-gallon jugs, fill it up into basically the millions of syringes.
So you just make the concentrated version of it.
Exactly.
Got it.
Just that like hyper-concentrated product that is the thing that it's known as in the pharma industry, active pharmaceutical ingredient.
Okay.
There's a lot that goes into your body when you're taking a tablet or a gel capsule that is not the active pharmaceutical ingredient.
Sugar add-ons.
Exactly.
I'm only imagining these must be very expensive medications. Like, is there anything we would be familiar with? Are you making Ozempic up there? What are the sample medications?
Well, what's crazy is so Ozempic, for 1 kilogram of Ozempic, it's $1 million. Okay. And so Ozempic is actually very expensive. You as a patient, you don't take 1 kilogram, you take like single-digit milligrams basically that you pay for. But even like Ozempic, we're not making it up in space. I'm not sure there's a huge benefit, but even if you wanted to, it's definitely the type of drug that could justify that type of cost.
Okay. So you're not going to see Advil and some ibuprofen. You're not going to see that being made up in space.
No, but like GLPs and above, which is plenty of the market in terms of revenue, there definitely be like that. Those pods, by the way, these are a handful of ones that have actually flown to space and back. Our first mission, our third mission, and then our 5th mission that went up to space. First one was definitely the trickiest, as you can imagine. We were going to land it after 2 months, but unfortunately had some challenges with the range, finding time to be able to bring it back. So we got stuck up in orbit for 8 months with that vehicle, which you can imagine if you have a whole business model that's predicated on bringing drugs back from space and you're not allowed to bring the drugs back, definitely hard to convince investors and customers that you're ready to go. But after 8 months, we sort of solved all those challenges, got that down. We then moved to Australia for our landings from there. Part of it is in the United States with that first military range that we landed at. We were competing with, basically the focus on, F-35, sortie tests, cruise missiles, etc. So it's hard to convince the military range, hey, let's prioritize this like space drug pod. Versus in Australia, it's a private range. There we give them money and then prioritize us. Much simpler relationship.
Happy to have you.
Where we're landing for the next
This one
little
seems to
while.
have some different wear on it to the others. Is it all black because just the heat, the carbon?
Yeah, that black and these street marks are basically because of reentry. What you see in terms of differences is everything from like literally the humidity in the stratosphere causing some differences. This one had a slightly different coating that led to that sort of like, sort of white structure. One thing that I like pointing out is this one has a little puck cut out of it.
Oh yeah.
That we actually sent off to NASA. So that was a part of a test where NASA basically helped us build a heat shield, and then part of the deal was that they got some of that heat shield back to analyze how it went. Now that NASA has had that testing and knows how it performed, NASA is actually going and using that heat shield on an interplanetary mission. So on the commercial side, we basically make drugs for top 20 pharma, publicly traded. We also have a whole federal business where basically the government uses these reentry pods as a way of testing out next generation reentry technologies. Everything from like heat shields, nose cone shapes, navigation sensors, flight computers. And so that's where we have multi-$100 million contracts with the US Air Force, Navy, NASA, international allies. Kind of a fun second part of the business.
Amazing. What's this noise I'm hearing over here?
So we do a lot of our like prototyping basically here in-house.
So everything's manufactured here.
We'll do early quick turn R&D here. As we're getting into like flight parts, that typically will work with like external manufacturers, but having this in-house CNC allows us to do really rapid design and iteration.
Got it.
What I like is we also are able to test our thrusters here in-house. So out back that I'll show you in a minute, we actually have our own propulsion test stand. So we can basically go design a propulsion tank and a thruster, manufacture it, basically here in our like R&D and proto shop, and then we can actually go take it out back and then go test fire the full thruster. And so it allows you to have this really fast iteration cycle.
Very efficient.
Yeah, definitely speeds things up. Part of obviously making drugs in space is we have to have bioreactor, bioprocessing equipment that allows us to do it up in orbit. And so on this table over here, we actually have W2's bioreactor. So that was our second mission that we ever sent up into sort of orbit. It's not the most complicated piece of sort of processing equipment, but it was a quick sort of demo proof point for us. So what we did is we basically took some pre-mixed vials that look like this effectively. This basically had some drug product on board, and we took it through what's known as a melt-cool process, so like a quenching crystallization. All that we're doing up there is basically just like heating and then cooling it and then crystallizing the therapeutic. This is a very simple sort of demo sort of reactor. We've now expanded the capabilities to now be able to do live mixing, filtration, vacuum drying, pumping. So there's a much more complicated set of hardware in some of our upcoming and last couple missions. But this is literally the W2 bioreactor. So this went to orbit and back. Basically that metal looks like it was cut yesterday, which kind of shows you, the environment that it goes through is actually pretty tightly controlled.
How many of these can you fit in the capsule itself?
So in the first version of our capsule, it was really only like one of those. We then expanded that to about 2 or 3. And then starting in Q1 of next year, we're going to be able to do about 6 to 7 of those on board in a single vehicle. So steadily expanding. We're also beginning design on our next generation vehicle. So everything that we've talked about so far, that's our W series, sort of like our Gen 1 sort of reentry vehicle. Our A series, which will be flying towards the end of the decade, that'll be about a 10x increase in terms of capacity, and it'll also significantly increase the reusability of the system. Okay. So right now, that satellite portion, half the spacecraft just burns up, one-time use, just the pods survive. In the A series, what we're going to do is we're going to make the full thing enveloped by the heat shield, and so you basically have all of the propulsion tanks, the thrusters, the flight computer, all of that will survive. Think of it sort of like a mini space plane, effectively. That'll be flying towards the end of the decade. Take us outside and maybe show you the propulsion test stand. That's sort of like the last section.
So how many re-entries have you finished already?
So we have flown 6 of our vehicles. All 6 have been brought back to Earth. 1 of those was in Utah, 4 of those were in Australia, and then 1 of those we actually ended up disposing in the ocean. It was like a demo mission. That
I wanted to ask you about that. You said you're landing them in Australia. I see a lot of space missions, they land in the ocean. Why not land in the ocean?
Landing in the ocean ends up making the vehicle much more complex. So if you think about recovering a space vehicle from the middle of the ocean, you end up having to make sure that the vehicle can actually float. You have to send out helicopters, cruise ships. It's a whole operation, divers that need to go find it. That is a non-trivial operation. If you're able to land in the middle of the desert, 2 dudes and basically like a helicopter is all that you need, and so much simpler operation.
Makes sense.
But yeah, this sort of little brick and mortar facility here, something we built entirely in house. This actually allows us to take those vehicles that you saw inside of that clean room, wheel them out here, fully load them up with propellant, operate the full basically deorbit burn, which is that thing that basically slows us down and brings us into the atmosphere. But also this building is rated such that even if I took a grenade and tossed it into the facility when it's fully filled up with propellant, you and I could be standing right here and be just fine. And then I like showing there's a fun sign over here that says, "Warning, beware of jet blast." If you're reading that sign, probably you're not bewaring of it.
Not in the right spot.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm curious, when you guys are looking for the different use cases for the medication, what makes one medication more viable to become one of the products that are made in space?
The area that we sit in is what's known as like formulation and administration. So microgravity doesn't affect like the discovery of new drugs. That gravity does not have a huge effect on. But once you've discovered the drug, I can't just like hand that to you as a patient. It has to go inside of a gel capsule, syringe, it has to get delivered to the right organ in the right way. That is the type of thing that microgravity can have a huge influence on. So,
and this is something the manufacturers aren't doing themselves. You're telling them, hey, we can help you make this better and more efficient.
Totally, and they may have tried a bunch of things on the ground to fix the problem that they're having, but it may just not be possible without microgravity.
What's going on over here?
These are basically like our avionics Hiddle tables. As a part of testing out a spacecraft, what you want to do is make sure that your software is being tested out in a flight-like environment. Think of them as the individual flight computers that are effectively on board, and this is running 24/7 throughout all the various aspects of a flight and simulating and basically tricking the computers into thinking, hey, you're deorbiting, hey, you're in the middle of an orbit, hey, you're doing the pharmaceutical manufacturing, and then every single night we're deploying each next version of the software and testing it against all those test cases.
A little bit of an audition.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Is it possible to create an anti-gravity environment on Earth? Like, why not create like some sort of vacuum sealed chamber and you could do this on Earth? Is that even possible?
You can create vacuum on Earth, so you can like suck out the atmosphere, but what we're up there for is not the vacuum, it's the lack of gravity.
Right.
And so what I like to say is like, look, the reason that we have gravity down here on Earth is because we're in the gravity well of Earth, which is bending the space-time continuum. If you could remove gravity down here on Earth, it also means you've figured out how to bend the space-time continuum.
Okay. There's no escaping it.
If you can do that, cool. We have warp drives and wormholes, and like we're living in like the sci-fi future.
So it's only possible in space.
It's only possible up in space, and so would love if that'd be possible. This is some of where we did like our very early prototyping and like R&D work on something like the bioreactor. Now is largely used for like sort of more regular testing of those. All this hardware is actually from our very first sort of office, and so it's always my kind of nostalgic the corner to come back here. Very early seed days of the company. This is how we did some of our scrappy early testing.
Speaking of the seed days, how many rounds of funding have you guys had so far?
Yeah, so we're through our Series C at this point. We've raised about $330 million across those sort of various rounds. We have about $200 million or so in like federal contracts across hypersonic tests, target presentation, NASA, all those various allied partners as well, and then have a handful of pharmaceutical sort of customers. United Therapeutics being the only one that we've like publicly announced. But yeah, excited with how much we've sort of progressed with what we've gotten to sort of today. Sure, there'll be more fundraising rounds in the future too.
Yes, we'd love to be a part of it too.
Yeah, absolutely.
We got into your last round. We're proud investors.
Of course, excited to have you guys on board.
Happy to be backing you guys.
Yeah.
Thanks for showing us around. It's amazing what you've built in such a short amount of time.
Yeah, no, we're obviously excited. Still a long ways to go to making this into a massive company. Can't complain, first 5.5 years, having a multitude of successful flights, having pharmaceutical customers on board, having the federal government support across a wide variety of use cases, regulators going from, kind of thinking that we're crazy to like, now we're one of 2 companies in the world that has an operator license to bring these bad boys down. So yeah, can't complain.
We look forward to seeing you at the summit in Abu Dhabi.
Yeah, it should be fun.
Yeah, we'll have you as a speaker there.
Absolutely, sweet.
I'll see you there.
Thanks for coming, Jordan.
Cool. Guys, thanks for joining us. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. While most companies are racing to launch, Varda is already bringing things back.